Hi there, it's me, Stephen Thomas, with another housing debrief, and we are reports on housing, and that is what we do. We're housing analysts, absolutely love dissecting all the numbers and everything. A lot of people have junk food that they like to eat, and we had a lot during Super Bowl, but I can't help myself. That's not my preferred junk food. It's not a whole bunch of everything, all kinds of food coming my direction. My junk food of choice is statistics, it's charts, it's graphs, it's anything to do with the economy. I totally enjoy it. This is what I like to talk about. Thank goodness my son works for me now. It works with us now, and that's pretty fun to go back and forth with him talking about economics, seeing him get excited with the jobs report and seeing with the inflation reports and manufacturing and everything else that we've had within this last week. So it's been a lot of fun to share that enthusiasm with one of your kids. So I'm quite lucky. Before we dive into this week's report, I wanted to bring us up to date with interest rates because there's a lot going on with interest rates. We're recording this on Friday, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. But before we dive into this week's episode, I wanted to talk about rates because the Federal Reserve is they used to be a lot more forward thinking. They would kind of talk about where things are going with the economy, the direction that it's going, and there was a lot more forward guidance. Now, with all of their recent press conferences and the different speeches, what they make it sound like is that they need to watch every single data point, and that there's not a lot of forward guidance. It's a lot of reaction to whatever the latest data shows, and it's whichever way the wind's blowing is kind of the sentiment that's out there. So that's why we get such velocity up and down and all over the place with interest rates. And that has to do with being very, very extremely data dependent. And the most important statistic that's out there right now is jobs. And you can actually see jobs market's been really strong because we've been watching initial jobless claims over a long period of time, and they've been really low. And they even dove down to a really low number towards the beginning of this year. And here we are in middle of February, and still the jobs numbers that are coming out, the initial jobless claims are really continue to be low. And this last week on Friday, we got a jobs report. It was the first Friday of the month, so it was jobs week. It was culminating with Jobs Friday, and that told us the number of jobs that were created. And in the United States, we created 143,000 jobs, which was a little bit less than expectations. But the issue why this didn't move the market down is because we had unemployment rate and we had a participation rate of people across the United States went up, and the unemployment rate went down. We're now at 4%, and it was at 4.2% just a couple months ago. So it's going in the opposite direction where unemployment's actually driving down. It means a more robust jobs arena. But really, what the issue is it's so robust that what the Federal Reserve doesn't want to happen is this to get way out of hand, where there's a lot unemployment gets too low and jobs created it continues to be really high, and we have a lot of job openings. That puts a lot of pressure on wages, which ultimately puts a pressure on inflation. So. Besides this unemployment report, there was wages, and it was a bit higher as well. So it was kind of like one of those reports that didn't do a lot with rates, but it didn't help out rates either. So it didn't hurt rates much, but it didn't help. And then everything else is important, not as important as jobs, inflation, manufacturing, retail sales. We had inflation and manufacturing inflation read this week, and retail sales all this week, with retail sales coming today on Valentine's Day, February 14th. And we had CPI come out, and the headline number went up, and so did core went up a little bit. And so as a result of this report, we had rates that went up for the day because this was not expectations. This was higher than expectations. People really worry when there's any kind of inflation, which goes the wrong direction, even though this is one data point. And it's not even the preferred inflation gauge for the Fed, which is actually Personal Consumption Expenditures Index, PCE, which doesn't come out till the end of the month, gets no fanfare. This one gets all the fanfare. This is the one that most traders watch, and they don't even necessarily look at the other stuff as much. Bond market watches personal consumption expenditures a lot closer because they know what it means to the Federal Reserve and rates. But this is CPI that came out this week, and then that came out on Wednesday, and then Thursday we got the producer price index. And what I'm pointing to, actually, you can't even see, it's the light purple. It's actually core. Core went down a little bit, as well as when you started peeling it back, the headline number went way up and people were freaking out when they saw this. But once you started peeling things off, and there was like doctor services and a few other components of it that actually showed that it's come down a lot more than what they thought, which states, implying the numbers that the personal consumption expenditures index that the Fed likes is going to be lower than what they had originally anticipated. So as a result, this actually drove rates down. And then there was retail sales came out today. And a sudden surprise for January, retail sales were way down. It was the lowest in almost 2 years. It was February of 2023. And you could see that on the very left. That was January, February 2023. That was the last time it was this low. And there's another thing called a control group. And that was actually, has been exceeding even where retail sales are. That control group, they just look at the same number of people and what they're doing. And what it shows is actually they were way down as well. So that the report that came out today, February 14th, drove rates down even further. So as a result of this whipsaw between jobs and everything else, and CPI and the other reads that came out yesterday and today, it's just been all over the place. Give you whiplash if you watched rates, if you're a rate watcher. And the biggest takeaway here is that the 10-year Treasury is coming down. It's been hovering right about 4.5%, a little bit above, a little bit below. And that's kind of shows you where interest rates have been as well. It's been right above 7% for quite some time, but it finally dove below 7% to 6.96%, and it's at its lowest level, if you draw a line across, all the way till December 17th, the day before the Federal Reserve lowered rates by a quarter point. And then Jerome Powell had his Fed speech in December, and then they talked about only having 2 rate cuts for 2025 versus 4 that they thought in September, as well as his Q&A was a disaster. And between the two of those things, that combined, we saw rates then come up, and then they stayed up, and they stayed elevated until today. They finally came below 7% at 6.96%, still knocking on the door of 7%. What we need from here is actual follow through, because we have been stuck above 7% for such a long time, and below 7 is where we want to play. We don't need to play all the way in 5s and 4s for this market, for the real estate market, for more buyers to be able to participate and more homeowners to be able to that would like to sell their homes, because rates aren't as high compared to what their underlying fixed rate is. This is where we need to be. We need to be below 7. So we're there right now, at least for a heartbeat. We need some follow through with more economic numbers that push this down a little bit further. So we'll continue to watch that. Right now, it's still stuck right about that 7% level, but we need to get into the 6s, well into the 6s for it to finally have a big impact on demand. Kind of like what we saw in September of last year when we got down to a 6.1% interest rate for a week, and we were below 6.5 for 42 days. That made a big change in the in rates as well as demand. That low rate environment created a lot of demand, a lot of pending sales, and we got a lot more closed sales at the end of the year as a result of those lower rates. So Which brings us, I needed to bring this rate update because they're all over the place, and I just wanted to bring you up to speed as to where we are and why we watch each of these economic points that come out on a daily basis, because it makes a difference in what we do. And if we can get below 7% with duration, it's really going to have an impact on our marketplace. But this week's episode is called Second Home Market is Slow. And I'm going to explain what really is going on here. We have various markets that we track that are called the secondary markets. And the more that we peel back and see these different secondary markets across the U.S., behaving very similar to the ones that we have a lot of data for. So I'm going to pull out the ones that we have a lot of data for, and Big Bear being one of those. In SoCal, it's the mountains with skiing close by, so that you can be at the beach, and then 2 hours later you can be on the mountain going skiing. It's that kind of a environment here in Southern California, and Big Bear is one of those second home markets. So Big Bear, and I'm going to show you at first what all these markets have done in 2022. In Big Bear in 2022, they had an expected market time of just 32 days. And you have to, if you dial back to the start of 2022, because this is the very start of 22 is what I'm comparing it to. This time, right around mid-February of this year, we're comparing it to February of 2022, 23, 24, and 25. And so at this point in time, we still had low rates. We still had rates that were in the threes. And yes, they were starting to go up, but it was still really good. There were very few homes on the market. We had a very low supply, and then we had plenty of demand that was in excess demand because there low supply. There were so many people bidding on whatever was left. And so the expected market time, anytime you get below 40 days, it is considered what I refer to as an insane market. That is where you have multiple offer situations, and most of the time you're actually selling for above the asking price. And in many cases, way above asking price, which is why values were continuing to scream higher even at the start of 2022 as rates were starting to climb. So Big Bear had a 32-day expected market time in 2022, and Lake Arrowhead, which is a little bit north of Big Bear, and also beautiful, no skiing, but great place for second homes, and another lake with a private community over there. And Lake Arrowhead had an expected market time of 33 days. And you're going to get the common theme that all of these are insane markets in 2022. Coachella Valley, that's homes like Palm Springs, Palm Desert, La Quinta, Rancho Mirage. All those combined is referred to as Coachella Valley. A lot of people know it for their annual big concert that goes on there. And Coachella Valley had an expected market time of 20 days. Now that you're at 20, you can imagine that is getting almost to the teens. It is an incredibly insane time for the marketplace in Coachella Valley in 2022. Then we have this small little community. Not too many people know it, but it's a mountain community that is in Riverside. Does not have any skiing, but it does get snow. It's actually above Palm Springs. There's this tram that takes you up to the top. That area over there are I think it's called the San Jacinto Mountains. And Idlewild is a small community of cabins that are there. It's a really pretty place to visit, and a great place for second homes also. And it had an expected market time of just 26 days. So very, very hot in the 20s there. And then we have Ojai. We've had retreats there. It's a beautiful place, has wonderful shopping. It too is home to, a lot of people call it their residence, but a lot of people also have it as second homes in Ojai. Absolutely beautiful, beautiful shopping, beautiful dining. And I don't have 2022, but we can imagine it's very, very similar numbers because we didn't launch our Ventura report until we got to the end of 2023. So in February of 2024, last year, we were at 154 days. And this is going to be jive with all those other markets. We can imagine that it was at least in the 30s or maybe in the 20s, like everywhere else that we were seeing across the board. There were some markets that were even in the teens. And that's just had to do with supply and the amount of demand that was out there. Then we have Joshua Tree, which is adjacent to Joshua Tree National Forest. And it too became home to a lot of vacation homes, and a lot of people like to play out in the desert and have the secondary home. And it had an expected market time in 2022 of 45 days, really close to that insane marketplace, not quite as hot as some of the other markets, but still really hot for, it says, I'm sorry, it says Idlewild. Should have said Joshua Tree. I don't know why that says that, but anyways, we have the federal funds rate. You have to keep in mind why the market has evolved and changed like it did. It's because we went from a very low rate environment to a very high rate environment, and this is the federal funds rate. This is actually a short term rate, but when they jack up the short term rate, this is the Federal Reserve as many times as they did starting in 2022 in March. They jacked it up so many times until they finished in July of 2023. They had moved it so high that we got the interest rates that went up along with it. The long-term mortgage rates went up as well with them. We saw 10-year treasuries and in long-term 30-year mortgage interest rates skyrocket and balloon as a result of the Federal Reserve with their new policy on raising rates to restrict the economy. And then later on in 2022, we breached, we got all the way up to 7%. In 2023, even got up to 8% mortgage rates. And you can actually see this here. This is start of 2022, had really low interest rates, about 3.25%, a little bit less at the very beginning. And it kept on climbing until we got to above 7% in the fall of 2022. And then it's been stuck above or at that high level, even got up to 8%. You could see that mountain in the very middle that got up to 8% in 2023. Now I'm going to show you there are actually 3 points where it dropped below 7%. Really nicely, almost to 6% at the very end of 2022, start of 2023. But it was great. It fed a bit of demand, but then rates started to pop up higher as the year progressed in 2023. And then in 2024, we had interest rates that were stuck above 7% for most of 2024. It did not get better until the very, very end as well. That's the arrow on the very, very right. And you could see actually in 2023, it got better at the very, very end as well. That middle arrow, we had interest rates for a moment below 7% into the sixes. So this dip in getting into the sixes keeps on lining up at the wrong time of the year. It needs to line up closer to spring for it to make a difference. And part of the problem is all the economic reads that we've been getting have showed that the economy is stronger and more resilient than everybody thought, especially in the first half. It would slow a bit towards the end of the year. We'd get some more favorable numbers for interest rates, and then interest rates would ease, and then they start to go up. Now where we're at today, they just came a little bit below 7%, but we'll have to see if it continues to go there. That's been the issue. These high rates matched up against the high values of homes have created an unaffordability issue. And in 2023, we had a lot of homeowners not come on the market. So it limited the amount of demand, but supply. So the supply was limited, but demand was limited also because of how high rates had gone. But it was matched up against low supply. Market slowed, but it didn't slow like so much, like so many people had thought, because of the limited supply. Then 2024 came along, and more homeowners came on the market, and we had very, very similar demand. Well, if you have more homes starting to come on the market, even though there were fewer homes compared to where the number of homes that normally come on prior to the pandemic, there were still more homes that were coming on, more than 2023, and those extra homes accumulated, built an inventory, matched up against the same demand as 2023, very, very similar. And so those extra homes with very similar demand as the prior year slowed our market. And that brings us to where we are in 2025 with very, very similar interest rates. Actually, rates are a hair lower than where they were last year. It has created, there's more homes on the market, very, very similar demand, and that has made it even more sluggish. And that's across all markets. Now, with the secondary home market, it has made it even more pronounced. And then you can throw in the wrench of vacation rentals and some of the restrictions, especially like in Coachella Valley. They have some where you just simply can't have any more at all. And there are different restrictions in the various areas, but some of them are more strict than others. And we'll see that's the evolution of vacation rentals. That adds to there's in these secondary markets where they can use their home some of the time and use it as a vacation rental for the rest of the time. That's causing a little bit of strain, and some of those people might be selling as a result, and which will just add to the overall inventory a bit. It's no landslide of extra inventory because of that. There's only some markets that have that. However, it does instigate a few more homes that are coming on the market. In Big Bear, you can actually see that it went from a 32-day expected market time to 2023 to 78, in 2024 to 149, and in 2025 to 299 days. That's where it's at right now. That just shows you that is how sluggish the market is in Big Bear. It is so sluggish that you can actually see when you have that high of an expected market time means you have a lot of homes and very few pending sales. If you want to win, the only way to make yourself stand out is by price. And you have to be in great condition. If you're not, then you really have to price it accordingly. So as a result, there's a lot of pressure in Big Bear on price. And Lake Arrowhead, same thing. Went from 33 to 120 to 236 to 508. 508, you would agree, is a lot of pressure on price. So a lot of these people are not in the predicament where they have to sell, but there will be some. And in order to stand out, what happens is they're going to have to sacrifice on price in order to make it happen in many, many cases. Then you have Coachella Valley went from 20 days to 89 days to 97 days to 132 days. While not as slow as Big Bear and Lake Arrowhead, it is slower than where it was a year ago. This does not mean that prices are coming down in the Coachella Valley, but this means that it is a lot harder to sell a home in Coachella Valley than it has been in the past. You can look at 2022, an insane market of 20 days, and now it's at an expected market time of 132 days. You better plan accordingly. And then we have Idlewild, which went from 26 days to 63 days to 159 days to 171 days. Now, not as bad as Big Bear, not as bad as Lake Arrowhead, but once again, it's slower than a Coachella Valley. So it means that you really have to pack your patience and make sure you're priced right. And there could be a bit of pressure on pricing there. And then you have Ojai, which went from 154 days last year to 202 days right now. And this is not just price. This has a lot to do with it's now getting to be a little bit more pressure on pricing. And so there could be some give there. We'll just have to continue to watch. If rates come down below 7% with duration into the sixes, all these markets will improve, as will the rest of all of the markets that we track across the United States. But if they're stuck where they're at right now, hovering right about 7%, this is going to preclude a lot of buyers from participating, have very, very similar year over year demand, and will continue to add to the inventory, which will further slow down the marketplace. Because that's the story right now. We're actually placing more homes on the market this year than we did last year, which was more than the prior year, which 2023 was the lowest amount ever that we'd ever encountered. Now we're getting even more homes coming on the market. Not yet where it was prior to COVID, the numbers, but there are some markets that are hitting that. LA being one of them, Phoenix being another one. There are more and more markets that are participating with more homes coming on the market, and that is just adding to supply because it's still being matched up against the same amount of demand as last year and the year before. So that's what's going on right now. The only thing that improves this are rates to come down. If they don't come down, know that these markets will get more sluggish like all the other markets across the United States. And then we also have Joshua Tree. And Joshua Tree went from 45 days to 245 to 306 to 263. So it got a little bit better than last year, but it's still close to 300-day expected market time. So now you kind of understand what's going on in these second markets. They're slower than other markets that we track. So we wanted to bring this to everybody so they understood what's going on with the second home market, that if they have a property that's in one of those areas, it might be worth their while to keep it a little bit longer and wait for the markets to turn when rates come down rather than participate in this current market that we're in right now. So thank you for joining us for another housing debrief. You can go to reportsonhousing.com to get more information or to actually subscribe to one of our many reports. We have one for all of SoCal. We have Bay Area. We also have Phoenix, and we have Vegas. And the latest report that came out is called A Winter Thaw. There's a new report that's going to be coming out this week where we'll be going over seller competition. And that's going to be a new report that comes out next week. For many of the markets, we'll get it next week, and then other markets will even get it the following week. So if you'd like a free month and you're going to go to reportsonhousing.com to subscribe, please utilize the coupon code HOUSE for a free month. Thank you so much for joining us. I do have a special guest. We're at the very end, and I promised him at the very end he can come on because he used to come on all the time. This is one of my 9 children. He is the youngest. What's tomorrow?
My birthday.
Your birthday. What's your name?
Ezekiel.
Ezekiel. Oh my gosh. Well, not everybody knows exactly who you are. So say hello to everybody.
Hello.
And what grade are you in? First grade. Awesome. Well, can't wait to celebrate your birthday tomorrow, bowling and singing happy birthday and eating birthday cake. We're going to have some fun. So let's have that tomorrow. Happy birthday, my bud. Well, thank you for joining us. Have a fantastic finish this week. Have a wonderful weekend. And of course, we will see you on the other side.